and I make a line. Got my 0 done. Now my next one is a 90. Well, we can put that down just the same way and draw a line, but here's the difference. After it's cut out, after that 90, so say this is cut out and it's set in here, I cut my 90 out. Now, all I want to do is when I'm putting this piece on top, we just rotate it around and set it right on top. Now we're going 90 degrees. In other words, we're arranging the way the plies get. Because that way, no matter what stresses, by the time we get to the end here, no matter what stresses are put on it from any direction, it's going to handle it. Okay? So remember, and you see I got my little arrow, meaning, because otherwise I got two 90s. Does that make sense? Or two zeros, however you want to. Or if I don't rotate this, I end up with two 0 pieces. But by doing this, we cut it out and just take that piece and rotate it and stack it right on top there. Okay? Now, our next one is a 45 plus. Okay? What I did is we take this and you make a diamond shape. Well, see there? And I draw it out. Okay? Because if we look at this, am I right? Mm-hmm. All right. This is your right here. So once again, once we cut it out, we're just going to take that puppy and rotate it and set it on top of the other one, just like that, right? Because that's your positive. We'll just cut it out, and then you take your piece and just rotate it, bam. And if you do them in succession, now take our rosette over here, the diamond again. Here's your negative, right? But on your negative, what we got to do is rotate it 90 degrees. See my arrow? This way, and then stack it on top. That's the only difference that makes it the difference between a positive and a negative.
Rotation.
Is the rotation. So for me, my military mind, I like things to work in sequence and in blocks. So there's one, there's my 0, because it's running in this direction. Just throw it down, do another one, cut it out, rotate it, boom, because now you've rotated it 90 degrees, right? Now, these have to be a diamond shape because we want it, this is our bias cut, basically, right? Our bias minus 45, negative 45. Put that devil on there, right? And just remember, you only got one that twists the opposite way, and that's our last one. Cut it out, turn that puppy, put it on. And then the last one, my bad, turn it around here. My last one, remember, turn it opposite and set it down. Now you've got P1 through P4, and what it is those, when you rotate them, they're the same size, but their plies are going in different directions because of the way you cut it. Does that make sense? Kind of, did I explain it okay?
So is that always
But,
true?
yes. Now, here's the thing is, and the reason I picked the big weave is to get you used to this, because when we get into the small weave, it's going to be a little harder to see, okay? But it's still laid out the same. But my goal is when we get to your clipboards, because your clipboards are they're not going to be this size. They're going to be regular full-size clipboards. So I'm trying to conserve material, so we'll use probably one or two of these, one or two of the tight weave, and then we'll, on either side, we'll sandwich it with the carbon fiber, cure it up, and it'll come out all nice and that black carbon fiber on the ends. But we're going to use this as materials in between, and you'll have the strongest clipboards known to man, right?
Sweet.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, but that way, by the time we get to that point, and really for a clipboard, we could run them all 90 and slap it together, but by that time, you'll have this process down. Why not do your clipboard the same way, right?
Why couldn't they seal bones and stuff with this?
Okay. So, here's what I'm going to do. Now, you notice I got this paper here, because you may cut out your materials, but what if you can't bag it right away? Contamination, right? So Rick's going to come along with these manly scissors, or real womanly scissors, whatever you want to call them. Now,
Handy dandy.
they do have smaller ones, because, you know, I got small hands, you know, I'm not a big person, so. Now, when you're handling this stuff, guys, remember, this stuff frays off really easy, so the less we have to fahattle with it, the better off we are, for the most part. You hear that stuff cutting? It wreaks havoc. That's why these scissors are so big, because a normal pair of scissors, it would just wreak havoc. And then as you get into the Kevlars and the carbon fibers, it really gets hard on scissors. So that's why they're so big and humongous, okay? So they can...
Does it matter which way you cut first, right?
Like I said, with my military mind, and I'm looking at my schedule, and being as that we're not covering the bottom of a part, we're just doing like the top, then I always try and go
Go
in
in
sequence,
order.
because that's the way my mind works. You know, like I said, and you know, the less I pull on this and everything else, the better off we are, because this is such big weave. Okay, so in the real world, I get my thing over here because it's all about sterilization. There's my zero, got my zero down. We're not going to get into the wetting out process, we're just doing ply orientation right now, because there's like 2 more lessons before we even get to the, in the total process of getting it bagged up. But this is like the foundation to your house. We can't do the upper bagging until we get our ply. And whatever comes across the board, it's what the customer, you know, I mean, you're not just going to guess, well, I think it's going to take, you're going to get a work order in your composites worlds. It's going to tell you how many ply orientations to put down. You're just not going to be guessing. You're going to have manuals. You're going to have that information, okay? You know, there's no guesswork about this.
You don't cut any access off the bottom at all.
We do after the part's cured out. Because what we're going to do is give it a haircut after it's cured out and give it a final weigh and see if it meets specs, because the fiber to resin ratio has to be right, or the part will be ineffective, right? You can have too less of resin, or too less of resin for the amount of fibers that you're letting out, and if you end up with not enough, it's not going to cure out right. Or you can put too much resin, and then at that point you're just adding weight, because at a certain point it's moot. And it's not going to get any stronger, you're just making it heavier, which is kind of defeating your purpose with composites, all right? Another thing, when you cut, never let your scissors go clear and snip clear down to the end, because a lot of times what it'll do is it'll create a fray at the end. I said this is not, okay, now, I'm going to take this, right? I'm going to rotate it around. There's my 90. You know what I'm seeing? Now I'm 90 degrees. All right. This is kind of wasteful. I'd like to lay it out if we can, but because I got dead space here, but just for demonstration purposes now, I look up, P3 is a 45-degree positive, right? And I laid it out that way according to my schedule. Just makes it easy, right? Instead of being bouncing around all over the place. So whatever my schedule is, and you're taught to read from left to right, that's the way I lay it out. It makes it just easier on the old man. Okay? Now, do you see the way I'm cutting it? How it's cutting at 45 degrees? You know, against the fibers there. So that's what they're talking about, because when we lay it down, it's going to give that part the strength that it needs in case it's under some types of loads or stress from that particular angle. Our bases are covered, right? Pretty messy stuff. You can see all the little hairs and everything else there. So
Dorothy, I'm sorry. It's okay.
I do have dust mask. I mean, unless you're out cutting this stuff up with a chainsaw, I mean, really, you shouldn't have that much, but if you're not comfortable, I do have dust mask, not a problem, okay? All right, so now,
Asbestos, you inhale it,
see which way my arrow is? So now I just gotta rotate that devil. There's my 45-degree positive.
I see what it's doing. It's stacking the squares against opposites.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
That's what
because-
gives it the tension strength.
Right, because now, once that part's cured out, if that stress is put this way, it's gonna handle
Is
it.
it gonna
Because
pull
remember in the demo, it lost its, when I stretched it, the
Diagonally, yeah. Or-
BIOS, it didn't have it. It was great at the 90 because this is 90-degree material, but that is gonna cover that now. If it makes sense, where it'll handle it. And this is a very small layout. Those black pieces I showed you, those are 7 layers on top and bottom, both. So you got 14 layers that was compressed, but they're symmetrical on the top and the bottom when they were laid out. Okay? So if the vacuum bagging's right, you would be really surprised at just how it can compress that stuff down. Now, what have they used? Now, I think these were out, but what I think derived from vacuum bagging is how many people got those things you hook your vacuum cleaner up and you put clothes in it or whatever, the plastic and it sucks everything flat?
They're on TV.
Yeah,
I see
well,
it on TV.
guess what? You'd be surprised at how much stuff you can suck flat and store away, right? And so the principle's kind of the same as far as what it does.
We stole that guy's idea.
No time consuming. But much on play. This is not a great weed to work with, but it's a good weed to learn with. Okay. Now. Huh?
That school thing right now.
Okay. So now, this one I had to turn this way because one's a negative, one's a positive, right? Okay, I look up on my board. Well, I got my stack up complete. I'm good as far as ply orientation because we're wanting to cover all our bases. Make sense? So what I'm gonna do, we'll get a rule and we'll cut this off nice and straight. And versus people standing around waiting to cut, we know these are 6 by 6. We'll measure up 6. We'll cut on lines. No, you want to do that? Well, a little more than 6, but.
Yeah, because your cross sections can be closer to 8.
Yeah, so, okay, let's mark 8 straight, well, first let's square this up, we'll mark up 8 inches, cut, throw a piece of material there, up another 8, cut, throw over there.
Okay, good.
Doing that way, people aren't waiting around to cut their plies or going,
Cool.
Now, those of you who do wanna check on your continuing education, pop in there real quick, see them, it's all good. But this is what we're concentrating on now, is learning our ply orientation, because the vacuum bagging pretty much doesn't change. It's gonna, for the most part, stay the way it is. Okay.
Yeah, when I look at the board, the symmetric kind of makes sense. But when I look at the diagram here, it doesn't make sense to me. Well, first you cut the 0 degrees and you cut the 90.
Yeah.
Why don't you cut from negative 45? Because from the, I want to show you from the.
So it goes, well, it says P1 through P4
So from
up.
here, you cut 45, then you cut this, then you lead them up.
Oh, why didn't I start with that?
Yeah.
Because on my schedule, Kofi, what it says, check it out.
Yeah,
Well, that's a good question, but on my schedule, my layout, my first ply down is 0.
Yeah, P1.
My P1 is my first ply, which is my 0.
That's what I'm saying. This makes sense, but on the board, it doesn't make sense to me. Here, this one makes sense. How you cut it makes sense from the board, but here, as it is drawn, I'm confused how to identify which one to cut first.
The way your plies are going, remember?
So you have to cut the 0
This
first.
is going this way, this is 0.
So always cut the 0
Yes. And then our 90
to be the next.
is
cut it.
basically a 0 turned 90 degrees. So you might as well cut your 2 squares and then you gotta cut your 2 45s.
So you shouldn't follow this one. You should follow the
Yes.
pattern.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, because basically when we stack these up, these, the plus and minus 45, when I'm saying turn them, oh, did I have that? Okay, turn it,
Yeah, that.
put it down.
No.
Nope, that's too far, like that. Now we're covering ourselves with the one this way, and then the 90 underneath that, and the 0 underneath that. I don't know if that,
Oh, it nice
Oh, yeah.
clean.
So
but you gotta remember to rotate those pieces
Okay.
when you put them on, otherwise you're gonna have, like your first two you cut, you'll end up putting down 2 zeros. But you take that second one and turn it 90 degrees and lay it down, now it's doing the 90 thing. The first one is 0, which is this way, or which is the warp. So your first one is 0. I might be able to explain this a little bit better, Kofi. Okay?
Oh, now it is clear now to me.
So basically what I did is I took my rosette and I put it down here, right?
You cut the 0.
And go ahead and draw 2 of them identical, but my first one, I'm just gonna mark on there as 0,
Okay.
and because 0 runs this way. So now, I take my second, draw a line and cut it, but what I gotta remember is I put 90 and a little arrow, so that means after I've cut this, I pick it up and I turn it just like this.
90.
Which is,
It's 90 degrees.
yeah.
And now this one, we have to do the same thing, Kofi. Well, gotta make the diamond, right? And we cut that devil out, or mark it, and then I'm gonna mark it, because looking at my schedule, it's a 45 plus. So I put 45 plus, and I put me a little arrow, means that once I cut that bad dog, I gotta take it and turn it like that and put it down. So now I'm running 45 plus. And then my last one, and here's your trick one, because if you turn it the same way, you're gonna have two 45,
Positive.
negative 45s. So what makes it a not negative is I'm gonna turn it the opposite direction now. Look up at my schedule, okay, P1 was 0, P2 is 90, 45 plus, and a 45 negative. So don't let, just remember that last one, if you lay it out just for this 4-ply layup the way I did, just remember the last one, you're turning to the right and setting it down. And that's the only difference between the 45 negative and the 45 positive. Make sense?
Yeah.
And I'll get with some of you guys while we're doing it to help you out, okay? So, without further ado, see what a mess this makes, right? I mean, so, now, I put because I don't know if I'm gonna get to bagging this today. You see what I did here? Well, we're gonna pretend I have a clean room. I come back with some paper towels because I got the foundation of my house right now, right? We got the foundation built. So I'm gonna cover them devils up because I don't want them to get contaminated, right? Now, if we were in a clean room environment, there's still precautions, but not like this. So I'm just trying to simulate clean. So I got my stack up now. Now, without confusing you, just imagine, we'll say this is our part. Well, just imagine these guys. This is a good way to envision this. Looking at the schedule I got up there, we'll say this is the part, or your mold. That would go right on top. But if this was a 3D, and we had to cover the bottom, like when we cut our foam, we do that exact same thing though on the bottom, right? Does that make sense? And because if it's a 3D object, obviously we have to have fabric on the top and bottom, so we just take that schedule, flip it upside down, make it where it's symmetrical, and you do the same thing on the bottom, and then we resin everything up, vacuum bag it down. And that's what I did on those the black pieces I showed you, that's 14 plies, 7 on the bottom, 7 on the top. But by the time it vacuums it, it's pretty thin. Dorothy?
So you don't resin between the layers?
Yes, you do, but I haven't got to that part of the
Oh.
lesson. But to answer your question, now I got my plies. What we do, I'll give you a little heads up of what's coming. These are our molds, right? What we're gonna do is, we're all gonna be working around that set of tables there. Now, one of you is gonna have to marry up I got it laid out where there's one part per mold, but we're gonna have to do 2 on 1 because the way I got it set up, unless somebody can figure out something better, I got 9 spaces. But for the sake of argument, Rick's wiped his mold down with acetone, and if, now that stuff stinks a little bit, you gotta be wearing gloves, but the bottom line is, if any of you don't like the smell, let me know, I'll wipe it down for you, okay? No harm, no foul. If you don't like it, that's your prerogative. So, my mold's all wiped down, right? Well, there's another process. There's a layer of film that we put on here, because otherwise, if we resin this puppy up directly to the mold and that cures up, we ain't gonna get it off there to save our lives, right? So, and it's called release film, and what I do is I put that on there. Now, the answer to Dorothy's question, now a lot of times too, versus trying to pull them off the bottom, since I got just a single stack up, I'll just flip it upside down, because I know this one's going down first. I've mixed my resin. I pour a little bit directly on the mold and kind of spread it out, and I lay my piece down on top of it, right? Boom, right? And what happens is the resin underneath will start soaking through, then I'm taking my squeeze, and then I'll pour just a wee bit on top, squeegee, and but this is a process I gotta show you, okay? We squeegee it out, then we take our next ply, we pour just a little bit on it, and for every ply underneath, you wanna add a little bit and a little bit on top, squeegee it, and you keep doing that. By the time you get to the top ply, you should, you pour that on there, you're gonna have to space it out. You shouldn't have any resin left in your cup, okay? If you do, something's wrong. Most of the time.
If you run out,
Yeah.
something's wrong.
Yeah, if you ran out, something's wrong, okay? It means your ratio wasn't right over on the table or something, but that's something I haven't taught you. But anyway, we get all that stuff done, then we actually go into bagging it, sucking it down. Then if we can knock this out in the morning, well, or before noon, we should be able to pull the bags off of there, and you'll have your first part to take home after we give it a haircut and lay it out. And then the next lesson, it'll be the same thing, but we'll be doing on top and bottom on a 3D piece. But like I said, after doing this multiple times, by the time we get to your final project, easy deal, right? Make sense?
It doesn't get trimmed or anything at all, we don't worry
Yes.
about that?
We don't trim it till it's cured out. So in other words, because it's part of the lesson, but what the optimum when this cures out and after it's given a haircut, we should be between 45 and no more than 50% resin ratio. Anything over that, the part's too heavy, or we put too much resin in. And so there is an actual, after it's cured out, a weight that we gotta see if we did it right. But I don't wanna put too much. That's for a couple steps later. What I want you to get used to is doing your ply orientation. Because we're gonna be doing this repeatedly through our projects, because the rest of it's simple compared to this. Well, make sense?
Yep.
All right, what time we got?
Quarter to 2.
Okay. So,
And another, the reason we don't want to trim it now, if I got it right, is if we trim it now, you see how it frays? So every time you go to play with it, you're gonna fray it off more, which is gonna make
Because-
it's gonna make them smaller than what they actually should be.
So after it's cured out and it's all crispy hard, what I'm hoping is that saw blade will get us through to composites. And we're gonna basically take our piece over and we're gonna cut the edges off, and then we're gonna do a final weigh and see if we're in that. Most of the time, if you mixed your resin right, when it dries, you're gonna be where you need to be. But that, like I said, I don't wanna get too far ahead of the game.
Can these be used as hot plates? When we're done, can it be used as a hot plate?
What? Oh, this?
Yeah.
No. Well, yeah, you could probably set something hot on it, but, not red hot, because remember, it's resin and it will melt. But if
Oh.
you're just setting,
Like a trivet.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just
I mean, it
curious.
just depends on how hot it is, because, remember, it is resin and it will melt and burn, and it stinks. You don't want that in your house, okay?
I'm just curious if there's a use for these after we make them.
You can make frisbees.
Frisbee. I think that came up with boomerang. Boomerang. You got a boomerang out of it.
Cat frisbees.
Dog toy. Dog shoe toy.
Tell you the truth, even after it's cured up, guys, it's still got fiberglass. You don't even really want to handle the thing after it's cured up. Now, your clipboards, once we get those trimmed up, yada, 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 those will be okay. But in reality, it's still fiberglass, and it's not something you want to handle even after. And once that fiberglass cures, it turns those edges into sharp razors, man. It'll cut you in a heartbeat, okay? So, are we all good on rosettes?
Yep.
So let's go till 2 o'clock. I'll give you a break. But in the meantime, we can square up our material. Let's cut 3